friends, in today's session, we will be looking forward to the next part of Negotiable Instrument Act 1881. Having discussed the basics of the Act and promissory note as a part of the instruments included, we will now be continuing learning about the other two instruments, that is, Bill of Exchange and checks. Bill of Exchange. Basically, Bill of Exchange comes into picture when a trader decides to sell goods on credit. Section 5 of the Act defines a Bill of Exchange is an instrument in writing containing an unconditional order signed by the maker directing a certain person to pay a certain sum of money only to or to the order of a certain person or to the bearer of the instrument. Parties to the Bill of Exchange. The following are the parties to the Bill of Exchange. First, the drawer, the person who draws the bill. Second, the drawee, the person on whom the bill is drawn. Third, the acceptor, one who accepts the bill. Generally, the drawee is the acceptor, but a stranger may accept it on behalf of the drawee. Fourth, the payee, one to whom the sum stated in the bill is payable. Either the drawer, any other person may be the payee. Fifth, the holder is either the original payee or any other person to whom the payee has endorsed the bill. In case of a bearer bill, the bearer is the holder. Sixth, the endorser. When the holder endorses the bill to anyone else, he becomes the endorser. Seventh, the endorsee is the person to whom the bill is endorsed. Eighth, drawee in case of need. Besides the above parties, another person called the drawee in case of need may be introduced at the option of the drawer. The name of such a person may be inserted either by the drawer or by any endorser in order that resort may be had to him in case of need, that is, when the bill is dishonored by either non-acceptance or non-payment. And lastly, acceptor for honor. Further, any person may voluntarily become a party to a bill as acceptor. A person who, on the refusal by original drawee to accept the bill or to furnish better security when demanded by the notary accept the bill, supra protest in order to safeguard the honor of the drawer or any endorser is called the acceptor for honor. Now, let's discuss the characteristics essentials of Bill of Exchange. As you have seen the characteristics of promissory note, now let's discuss that of Bill of Exchange, which will be similar to it as they both belong to same act, so they tend to have similar characteristics. First, it must be in writing. Second, there must be an order to pay. Third, the order must be unconditional as the bill can be paid at any event. Fourth, the drawer, drawee and payee are necessary parties for Bill of Exchange. Fifth, the sum payable must be certain. Sixth, the instrument needs to be signed by the drawer. Lastly, the medium of payment must be money only. Now, there are certain rules which are applied for both promissory note and Bill of Exchange and are related to the maturity and days of grace for both of them. Maturity and days of grace. A promissory note or Bill of Exchange may be payable first on demand, second on a specified date and lastly after a specified period. In case 1, the amount is payable on the instrument when the demand is made, while in case 3, date of maturity has to be calculated. Maturity basically is the date at which it falls due. Every instrument which is otherwise payable on demand is entitled to have 3 days of grace. These days of grace are now a legal right being offered by law. In case of a bill or note entitled to days of grace, the calculation of date of maturity is really important. All such instruments must be presented for payment on the last day of grace, where an instrument is payable by installments. Each installment is payable 3 days after the day fixed for payment of each installment. For example, first, a bill dated 1st January 2007 is made payable 4 months after the date, so it falls due on 4th May 2007. Second, a bill is payable on 29th February 2007. It falls due on 3rd March 2007. After getting the idea about promissory note and bill of exchange as an important negotiable instrument, the next is most important instrument which could be seen frequently by you is check. Distinction between bill of exchange and promissory note. The following are the important points of the distinction between a bill of exchange and a promissory note. First, a promissory note is a two-party instrument with the maker and the payee. In a bill, there are 3 parties drawee and a payee, though any 2 out of the 3 capacities may be filled by one and the same person. In a bill, the drawer is the maker who orders the drawee to pay the bill to a person called the payee or to his order. When the drawee accepts the bill, he is called the acceptor. Second, a note cannot be made payable to the maker himself, while in a bill, the drawer and the payee may be the same person. Third, a note contains an unconditional promise by the maker to pay to the payee or his order. In a bill, there is an unconditional order to the drawee to pay according to the directions of the drawer. Fourth, a note is presented for payment without any prior acceptance by the maker. A bill payable after sight must be accepted by the drawee or someone else on his behalf before it can be presented for payment. Fifth, the liability of the maker of a pro note is primary and absolute, but the liability of the drawer of a bill is secondary and conditional. Sixth, the foreign bill must be protested for dishonor, but no such protest is necessary in case of a note. Seventh, when a bill is dishonored, due notice of dishonor is to be given by the holder to the drawer and the intermediate endorsee, but no such notice need to be given in the case of a note. Eighth, a bill can be drawn payable to bearer provided it is not payable on demand. A promissory note cannot be made payable to bearer even if it is made payable otherwise than on demand. Check. A check is a bill of exchange drawn upon a specified banker and it is payable on demand. It includes the electronic image of a truncated check and a check in electronic form. A check in electronic form means check which contains the exact mirror image of a proper check and is generated, written and signed in a secure system ensuring the minimum safety standards with the use of digital signature and asymmetric crypto system. A truncated check means a check which is truncated during the course of a clearing cycle either by the clearing house or by the bank, whether paying or receiving payment. A check is a bill of exchange with 2 more qualifications, namely, first, it is always drawn on a specified banker, and second, it is always payable on demand. Going through the characteristics or essentials of checks, it is said all checks are bill of exchange, but all bills of exchange are not checks. It has all the essential requisites of a bill of exchange. It must be signed by the drawer. it must contain an unconditional order on a specified banker to pay a certain sum of money to or to the order of a specified person or bearer of the check. But then there are certain features which a check has but bill of exchange doesn't. Those are seen below. First, a check requires no acceptance like a bill of exchange. Second, a check is not entitled to any days of grace. Third, a check is always payable on demand. Fourth, a check may be crossed but not a bill. Fifth, a check doesn't require any stamp. Sixth, a check is not required to be noted or protested for dishonor. After covering the basic characteristics of all the instruments of this Act, there are other provisions of this Act which are to be studied, and one among them is crossing of checks. Crossing of checks. There are basically two types of checks: open checks and crossed checks. A check which is payable in cash across the counter of a bank is called an open check. When such a check is being circulated, it is risky for the holder. If the holder loses it, any finder can go to the bank and get the payment until the payment has been stopped. Due to this reason, the custom of crossing was introduced. A crossed check is one on which two parallel transverse lines with or without the words "and company" are drawn. A cross check is a check which is payable only through a collecting banker and not directly at the counter of the bank. Crossing ensures security to the holder of a check, as only the collecting banker credits the proceeds to the account of the payee of the check. Now, let's see different types of crossing. There are basically two types of crossing, namely general crossing and special crossing. General crossing. Generally, the checks are crossed where it bears two transverse parallel lines across its face and addition of: first, the check bears an abbreviation "and company" between the two parallel lines, or second, the check bears the words "not negotiable" between the two parallel lines, or third, the check bears the words "account payee" between the two parallel lines. A crossed check can be made bearer check by cancelling the crossing and writing that the crossing is cancelled and affixing the full signature of the drawer. Special crossing. When a particular bank's name is written in between the two parallel lines with or without the words "not negotiable," the check is said to be specially crossed. The two parallel or transverse lines are not necessary in case of special crossing. In addition to the word bank, the words "account payee," "not negotiable" may also be written. The payment of such check is not made unless the bank named in crossing is presenting the check. The effect of special crossing is that the bank makes payment only to the banker whose name is written in the crossing or his agent for collection. Distinction between checks and bill of exchange. As a general rule, the provisions applicable to bills payable on demand apply to checks, yet there are few points of distinction between the two. Namely, first, the check is a bill of exchange and always drawn on a banker, while a bill may be drawn on anyone including the banker. Second, a check can only be drawn payable on demand. A bill may be drawn payable on demand or on the expiry of a specified period after sight or date. Third, a bill payable after sight must be accepted before payment can be demanded. A check does not require acceptance and is intended for immediate payment. Fourth, a grace of 3 days is allowed in the case of time bills, while no grace is given in the case of a check for payment. Fifth, the draw of a bill is discharged if it is not presented for payment, but the draw of a check is discharged only if he suffers any damage by delay in presentment for payment. Sixth, notice of the dishonor of a bill is necessary, but not in the case of a check. Seventh, the check being a revocable mandate, the authority may be revoked by countermanding payment and is determined by notice of the customer's death or insolvency. This is not so in the case of bill. Eighth, a check may be crossed but not a bill. A check is a bill of exchange drawn on a specified banker and always payable on demand. A check is always drawn on a particular banker and is always payable on demand. Consequently, all checks are bills of exchange, but all bills are not checks. So let us summarize what we have studied in today's topic of Negotiable Instrument Act 1881, which includes certain instruments which are negotiable, which means they can be transferred from one person to another. The instruments studied by us were bill of exchange and checks. Promissory note is an instrument in writing which is unconditional and signed by the maker to pay a certain sum of money to a certain person, while bill of exchange is also an instrument in writing which is unconditional, signed by the maker, but here it is directed to a person to pay certain sum of money or to the order of certain person or bearer of the instrument. Third one is most important and friendly instrument is check, which is a bill of exchange drawn on a specified banker and is payable on demand. Thus, now you might be able to know all three of them and how they are different from each other. Thank you.